Hello and welcome back to Indistinct Chatter. I'm Eliza and happy belated Memorial Day. Unrelated, I hope you're ready for some major booing, but first, the news. So I have to start with something that happened Saturday, May 23rd, right outside the White House. And if you saw the story pop up on socials, maybe you saw the meme with that one reporter unaware of what's happening, maybe you thought to yourself, wait, did this just really happen again? And the answer is yes. Yes, it did. It happened again. A 21-year-old man named Nasir Best from Dundalk, Maryland, walked up to a Secret Service security checkpoint at 17th Street and Pennsylvania Avenue, pulled a gun out of a bag, and opened fire on officers. Officers returned fire, shot him, and he was taken to George Washington University Hospital, where he later died. A bystander was also hit in the crossfire and is hospitalized with what they're calling non-life threatening injuries. Now, here's the part that should be setting off some alarm bells, raising some pretty serious questions. This was not the first time Nasir had shown up at the White House. Apparently, back in June of last year, he was involuntarily committed to a psychiatric hospital after he blocked a vehicle entry point outside the White House and told officers he was Jesus Christ and wanted to be arrested. Then, in July, just a month later, he was arrested again, this time on an unlawful entry charge after walking into a restricted pedestrian access area. A court issued a stay-away order barring him from the area completely, and then a bench warrant was issued when he didn't show up for a subsequent hearing. So this is a man who was known to Secret Service, known to DC law enforcement, had been involuntarily committed, had an active bench warrant, had a standing court order keeping him away from the White House, and he still walked up to a checkpoint with a gun and opened fire. And this was the third incident of gunfire near the president in 1 month. There was the attempted assassination shooting, whatever, at the White House Correspondents' Dinner on April 25th. Then a man named Michael Marks from Midland, Texas, fired at officers near the Washington Monument on May 4th. And now this. 3 separate incidents in 30 days. A lot of questions are swirling around about how someone with Nasir's documented history, with that bench warrant, with that court order, was able to just walk up to a checkpoint. It sounds pretty crazy, right? I don't know. Maybe it is that easy. I feel like it shouldn't be. And now something that has been dominating the news for months and is now actually starting to affect real people in real ways. The one big, beautiful bill. If you're not entirely sure about what this actually is and what it means for your life, I'm gonna try to break it down a little bit. I won't get into all of it. The One Big Beautiful Bill Act was signed into law on July 4th last year, and it is a massive piece of legislation. Like, massive, massive, over 1,000 pages. And in it, it does some things that a lot of Republicans really wanted, like making the 2017 tax cuts permanent, eliminating taxes on tips and overtime, and putting more money into border security. But what else is in the bill? The Congressional Budget Office, which is the nonpartisan group that does the actual math, confirmed it cuts more than $1 trillion from Medicaid over the next decade. So not a billion, $1 trillion. They project that 11.8 million people will directly lose their Medicaid coverage. And on top of that, because the bill adds so much to the national debt, it triggers automatic cuts of nearly $500 billion to Medicare as well. And the question that a lot of people are asking right now is pretty obvious. Who's paying for those tax cuts? And the honest answer, according to the CBO, is, in large part, the people who rely on Medicaid and Medicare. And here's the news within the news that's getting buried under the headline. So Nebraska just became the first state in the country to start implementing the work requirements. Starting this month, adults in Nebraska who are on Medicaid now have to prove they're working, in school, or volunteering, or prove that they are too sick to do so in order to keep their coverage. Advocates are calling it a disaster in the making because the fear isn't really about people losing coverage because they don't qualify. It's that they're going to lose it because of paperwork. You miss a deadline, you don't get the letter for whatever reason, maybe you can't navigate the system, you're cut, you're off. And if anyone has had to deal with paperwork with pretty much any kind of government entity, you know it's a literal nightmare from hell. And then there's the whole rural hospital situation of it all. So I brought it up a couple of times when we discussed the mifepristone, and once again, I think it is one of the most underreported parts of this whole story. More than 300 rural hospitals right now are at what researchers are calling immediate risk of closure because of how these cuts affect their Medicaid revenue. Think about what a rural hospital closing actually means for a second, okay? It's not just an inconvenience. If the nearest hospital is 2 hours away and someone has a heart attack or a car accident or goes into labor, that's a life or death situation. In Arizona alone, 5 specific rural hospitals have been flagged as likely to close. These are the only hospitals for entire communities. Quite honestly, I think of this whole thing as like digging your own grave. Switching gears, I want to tell you about a woman named Jennifer Combs because this story has been all over my socials. So, Jennifer Combs lives in a small town called Trinidad, Texas. Population just over 900 people. She ran a community Facebook page called Southern Belle Watch, which is basically just a local watchdog page where neighbors share information. You know the pages. She has no criminal record, not even a speeding ticket. And on May 8th, police showed up at her door and arrested her on a felony charge. Jennifer, what did you do? She wrote a Facebook post, and the post in part included, quote, "We have received reports that some citizens have been hospitalized due to bacteria in the water. This is a serious public health concern that deserves immediate attention. If your water looks discolored, contains sediment, has a strong odor, or you have experienced related health issues, please send us a message. We are gathering information and reporting findings to the state." End quote. Talk about a crazy, crazy post, Jennifer. Am I right? No. And somehow that post got her a night in the Navarro County Justice Center. The charge was felony false alarm report under the Texas Penal Code 42.06. Only that specific law is a law designed for people who call in fake bomb threats. Trinidad's police chief, Charles Gregory, decided that it also applies to a woman who ran a community Facebook page and repeated what her neighbors told her about getting sick. Water quality, bomb, same thing, I guess, right? It gets even more bonkers wonkers. So, the Trinidad Police Department had posted their own Facebook warning back on April 6th, threatening felony prosecution for anyone making false claims about the water supply. Interesting. And then 15 days later, on April 21st, the city issued a formal boil water notice telling residents not to drink, cook with, or wash dishes in the water without boiling it first. So basically, the city threatened to arrest people for saying the water was unsafe, and then 2 weeks later confirmed the water was unsafe. Talk about control issues. And how bad is the water anyway, you might be wondering? Well, residents had been sharing photos of dark brown liquid flowing from their sinks and bathtubs. Jennifer herself described it as looking like the Trinity River was coming out of people's taps. Nasty. The Texas Commission on Environmental Quality confirmed they received a complaint about Trinidad's water and that an investigation is ongoing. Just to recap here, Jennifer Combs never even had a speeding ticket, definitely not some kind of criminal. She simply posted a community warning asking neighbors to share information about their water. It wasn't even a warning, really. She was just like trying to gather some data. And then she's arrested over it on felony charges. Like, what is even happening? SMU constitutional law professor Dale Carpenter reviewed the facts and said he questions whether a crime was ever even committed. His quote, "She's making a statement regarding a matter of great public interest, and so people sometimes make false statements on matters of great public interest, and they're allowed to do so." A YouTube journalist named Winston Knowles drove to Trinidad specifically to protest the arrest. He was live streaming outside City Hall holding a sign that obviously couldn't be shown on television because it said "fuck bad cops." He was arrested mid-live stream on a misdemeanor disorderly conduct charge, just 18 minutes in. Jennifer's attorney, CJ Grisham, put out a statement that said, "The city of Trinidad has become a cautionary tale of what happens when unchecked ego masquerades as governance." He called for the termination of the police chief and a city council member. He said Trinidad deserves leaders who serve its people, not officials who sacrifice them on the altar of wounded pride. The good news, if you can even call it that, is that A Henderson County grand jury no-billed Jennifer's case, meaning they declined to indict her and the charges were dismissed. Winston Knowles' case was also dismissed by the municipal judge. Jennifer has since filed a federal lawsuit against the city, the police chief, another officer, and a city council member, alleging the whole thing was deliberate political retaliation. And the whole time that I was reading about this, it made me think of when people say, like, don't waste law enforcement's time. Like, don't call emergency if it's not a real emergency. Don't take them away from real emergencies, whatever the whole saying is. Well, what if law enforcement takes time from law enforcement or from the courts? Like, what even is this? A false alarm? They made a false alarm, in my opinion. But here's something else that's very interesting, in my opinion. So, according to Yahoo News, Trinidad City Hall abruptly closed after all of this went public. Just boop, boop, doors closed, no explanation. Okay, now, the booing. You might have seen the viral clips. This is both news mixed with today's topic, theme, whatever. So graduation season is in full swing, as you know, and in the past 2-ish weeks, maybe more, speakers at multiple ceremonies and colleges have brought up AI, and the graduates have responded by booing the speakers. Not just a little groaning, like I'm talking full, sustained, loud booing. Boo! At the University of Central Florida on May 8th, a real estate executive named Gloria Caulfield told the graduating class of the College of Arts and Humanities that the rise of artificial intelligence is the next industrial revolution. The crowd went off immediately. Boo, boo. She looked around and said, "Oh, okay, I struck a chord. Yeah, no shit, Gloria. You're saying this to those whose career is the first to go because of AI. The career they just paid thousands and thousands of dollars for and dedicated however many years of their lives to, all while probably being told they're not allowed to use AI for anything themselves." When she brought up pre-AI life, the crowd cheered. They were happy. She brought up AI as the future again, and they booed again. She called it a bipolar crowd, which, Gloria, that is not the right wording. And then one day later at Middle Tennessee State University, Scott Borchetta took the stage. And you might know him. He founded Big Machine Records, which is the label that launched Taylor Swift. He was speaking to the College of Media and Entertainment, which is literally named after him. It's called the Scott Borchetta College of Media and Entertainment. He opened with, "AI is rewriting production as we sit here." Immediate booing. So his response? "Deal with it. It's a tool. Make it work for you." Still booing. Boo. So he doubles down and he adds, "Hear me now or pay me later." Like, how out of touch can you be? Like, come on. Like, clearly he's an investor, or are you just like a salesman? Then, May 15th at the University of Arizona, former Google CEO Eric Schmidt faced sustained booing from essentially the moment that he mentioned AI. He had to stop mid-speech and say, "If you'd let me make this point, please." The crowd got louder. He pressed on anyway, telling the graduates this technological shift will touch every profession, every classroom, every hospital, every laboratory, every person, and every relationship you have. Sounds like a threat to me. And then on that same day at Glendale Community College in Arizona, the school didn't even bring in a speaker to talk about AI, but you bet your ass they used it. They deployed an AI system to read graduating students' names as they walked across the stage, because making a list and reading names is like really, really hard, you guys. I need AI to do it. It started skipping names, displaying wrong names on the Jumbotron. The ceremony had to be paused not once, but twice. A graduate named Grace Reamer said she didn't hear any cheering from her family when she walked and only realized something had gone wrong after she sat back down. Several minutes later, she finally heard her name. The college president got on the mic to explain and told the crowd, "Hey, so we're using a new AI system as our reader." The crowd instantly booed. And honestly, this is kind of like a little bit of a side note, not really, but bring back booing. Just in general, more people should be booing and more people should get booed. They eventually reversed course and they brought affected students back to the stage with a human announcer, and they called it a lesson learned. a lesson learned at someone's graduation, and you guys are professionals. You have degrees. Do you see the irony of relying on AI instead of your own brain and your own abilities? You're in education and you don't see that? Did you stop using your critical thinking? They just swapped out a human being for a machine at one of the most personal milestones of these students' entire lives and assumed that everyone would just, like, I don't know, be fine with it, like praise them or something. Like, for what? What hard work did you do? And obviously, no one went along with it. So that is what we are digging into today. So I want to preface this with I don't want to be a blind hater. There's a lot about AI I don't know. And to be honest, I still hold on to a twinkle of hope that in the right hands, with the right policies, AI can be used for good and not destroy us all. However, in the state it's currently in, I'm in camp anti AI. And I get why people use it, especially for small businesses. I understand some places of work it's required. I'm not hating on you. I'm not trying to tell you what to do with AI. I'm just sharing some information that you can take with you, do with it what you will. I just want to talk to you about what is actually happening behind the scenes with how this technology is being built and who is paying for it, and whether the people telling everyone to just deal with it have any idea what it's actually costing the rest of us. There's this saying that is very popular, and I've used it before in various reasons over the years, but what does adapt or die actually mean? Because if you push back on AI in any way right now, that phrase gets thrown at you almost immediately. It's either adapt or die, or it's here, deal with it, it's inevitable. They paint you in this light of, you're scared, you're resistant, you're going to get left behind, adapt or die. But where does that phrase actually come from? Well, it's a biological concept, Darwin, and no, I'm not talking about the monkey from the wild thornberries. I'm talking about the English naturalist and biologist best known for developing the theory of evolution by natural selection, Charles Darwin. And it's the idea that species that can't adapt to their changing environment go extinct. And over time, it became a business phrase too. When cars replaced horses, buggy makers had to adapt or die. When electricity replaced gas lamps, the gas lamp industry had to adapt or die. When streaming replaced DVDs, Blockbuster had to, unfortunately, adapt or die, which shout out to the last Blockbuster in Bend, Oregon. I hope that it's still up and running. If it is, and if you want to feel something again, first of all, just visit Bend in general, but also visit the Blockbuster. Anyway, those situations, they all have something in common. The thing replacing the old thing was driven by genuine human demand. People wanted cars, people wanted streaming. Nobody had to be told that flipping a switch was better than managing a gas lamp. The market moved because collectively, organically, humans said, yes, this is better for us. And I mean, obviously, there's a lot of behind the scenes marketing, but generally, humans wanted the changes. Nobody seized private farmland to run transmission lines to the local gas lamp factory. No one's electricity bill went up just so that a private company could build a server farm in a cornfield. And that's the distinction that I don't feel people are fully grasping. You and me, we get it. I'm talking about the dumb billionaires, because the argument being made right now is that AI is inevitable, that resistance is futile, that those graduates booing those speakers, they're just scared, they'll come around. But I, along with, I don't know, maybe millions of other people, think that what those graduates are actually responding to is something more specific than that. And to understand it, you have to understand what's happening on the ground level right now. So, not the whole abstract conversation of AI is changing everything, like that whole conversation. I'm talking the actual physical, real life consequences of how this technology is being built and who's paying for it. So, AI needs an enormous amount of physical infrastructure to run. I'm not talking a small warehouse the size of like your local Walmart or Target. I'm talking massive, massive data centers, buildings the size of multiple football fields packed with servers that have to stay cool constantly around the clock. And those data centers need power, obviously. They need a staggering, almost incomprehensible amount of power. According to research published in the journal Nature Sustainability, at the current rate of AI growth, by 2030, these data centers will put between 24 and 44 million metric tons of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere annually. That's the equivalent of adding between 5 and 10 million cars to US roads every single year. A January 2026 report from Bloom Energy projected that US data centers' combined energy demand will nearly double between 2025 and 2028, jumping from 80 to 150 gigawatts. That's like adding the entire energy consumption of Spain in just 3 years. And here is where it gets personal, okay? Like on our level, you and me, not billionaires, not tech bros, just regular degulars like us. Electricity prices nationwide rose 6.9% in 2025 alone, more than double the overall inflation rate that year. Goldman Sachs economists project that data centers will account for about 40% of all power demand growth over the next 5 years. So when your electric bill keeps going up and you're not entirely sure why, this is part of the answer. But it gets even more personal than that. In Wisconsin, a 600-acre AI data center is under construction, and the communities around it have been fighting eminent domain battles over the transmission lines needed to power it. And what's eminent domain? Well, get ready to get even more pissed, because it's when the government can legally force you to give up your property for what they determine to be public use. That's right, your home, the one that you have paid your mortgage on, the one where memories have been made. It's not ever really truly yours if the government wants it someday. Now, eminent domain was designed for things like roads, schools, bridges, things that actually serve the public. So obviously it still sucks, but maybe for some people it's kind of like a sacrifice for the greater good. Maybe. This past week, though, a story went viral out of Georgia because Georgia Power is using eminent domain to seize hundreds of properties across Coweta and Fayette counties to build a 35-mile, 500 kilovolt power transmission corridor. The sole purpose of that corridor is to serve at least 4 AI data centers. Over 330 private properties are affected, aka people's homes. Some who've had multiple generations grow up in them, and one of those properties is the childhood home of a 27-year-old woman named Ansley Brown. She said, "It is what made me who I am today, so it wouldn't make sense if I didn't fight for it." She was 5 years old when her mom moved into that house. That's her home. That's her life. I feel like people sometimes don't realize that your home is your most sacred place. Like, it's where you should feel the safest. It's where you should feel the most grounded. You know what I'm saying? In Maryland, landowners posted signs along rural highways reading "No eminent domain" for corporate gain. In Pennsylvania, a utility company proposed a high-voltage transmission line that would run about 100 feet from a family's home. And as of early 2026, more than 100 local communities nationwide have enacted moratoriums on new data center construction. Over 300 state bills related to data centers were filed in the first 6 weeks of 2026 alone. So clearly, obviously, these aren't just one-offs. They're not just affecting a certain area. If you've been paying attention, this is a nationwide response from regular people who are watching something happen to their land, their power bills, and their water supply, all while nobody even asked them. Or if they did ask, they didn't care what their answers were. And on the water point, because this one really gets a lot of people, it's what I see the most people discussing when speaking out against AI. US data centers consumed an estimated 21.2 billion liters of water in 2014. By 2023, that number had climbed to 66 billion liters. Training the GPT-3 language model alone evaporated approximately 700,000 liters of clean freshwater in Microsoft's US data centers. That's for one model, one time. And now we're on what? GPT-5, 5.5? Now, the counter argument you always hear is, yeah, but data centers create jobs, right? That's always an important argument for big companies to make, especially to rural towns, farming towns, small towns. But I've got news on that too. Yes, they do create jobs, just temporarily. Construction jobs, electricians, welders, HVAC workers, pipe fitters, real jobs for real locals. Great, but only temporarily. A 2025 policy brief from University of Michigan researchers found that data centers, quote, do not bring high-paying tech jobs to local communities. They compare the economic impact to a bridge or a highway. You build it, you employ a lot of people to build it, and then it mostly just runs itself, right? The tech bros working are probably coming from Silicon Valley or something like that. It's not going to be your neighbor Doug who went to school for IT. For example, a 1.1 million square foot Vantage data center facility outside of Reno, Nevada estimated it would create 73 permanent jobs over the next decade. Just 73 jobs in 10 years. For over 1 million square feet of infrastructure. And a Food and Water Watch report from January of this year found that Anthropic, which is the company that makes Claude, and by the way, Oprah just interviewed the co-founders. Go watch that interview. Very interesting, very out of touch as usual. Well, they announced $50 billion in data center investment with only 800 permanent jobs planned. Meanwhile, Google, a major investor in Anthropic, cut 7,500 jobs elsewhere in the company this year. So did Adobe and a bunch of other companies. And you would think less people working means less money going towards paychecks, which should mean that our services are cheaper, right? Yet somehow, the more AI is used and the less real people, the more we, the users, pay. Interesting. The Brookings Institution reported that in Virginia alone, the data center sales tax exemption cost an estimated $1.6 billion in fiscal year 2025. That's $1.6 billion in tax breaks from one state's taxpayers to companies that produced a fraction of the jobs promised. And in the PJM grid region, which is a massive independent power grid serving over 65 million people across 13 states and DC, it's also the largest wholesale electricity market in the United States. It's designed to manage grid reliability and facilitate competitive energy trading. Well, their power supply costs jumped from $2.2 billion to $14.7 billion in just one single year, with data centers accounting for nearly 2/3 of that increase. So, back to the graduates. When a billionaire stands at a commencement ceremony and tells graduates that AI creates jobs and opportunities, the math doesn't fully back that up. Certainly not for the communities hosting the infrastructure. And now, here's where it gets a little meta. So, sorry to say, but I did speak with Claude. And when you ask AI directly about its own risks and impacts on people, you do get a pretty candid answer. Because it's trained on the same research that we've been talking about, it will tell you that the environmental footprint is real and growing, that job displacement in knowledge work and creative fields is a documented and ongoing concern. It also tells you that data privacy risks are significant, that concentrating AI infrastructure and power among a very small number of private companies creates economic inequality, and that the communities most impacted by data centers are often the least likely to benefit from the technology itself. AI knows all of this. The people building it know all of this. The executives standing at those commencement podiums and in all these interviews, they know this, which is exactly why the booing makes complete sense, obviously, and we should boo them more. So I've been seeing a lot of clips from hacks. There's a scene in season 5 that I keep seeing on Reels where Ava is sitting across from a tech developer who's pitching an AI product to Deborah Vance. And he tells her that it's inevitable. And Ava says it's only inevitable because you're forcing it on everybody. And it goes back to the adapt or die. And that only works as a survival strategy when the change is driven by genuine human need and natural evolution. Again, when the printing press replaced scribes, nobody was threatening to seize farmland in order to run printing press infrastructure. When the internet replaced encyclopedias, nobody was telling graduating students to hear them now or pay later. The change happened because people genuinely wanted it and it genuinely served them. The pace and force of this particular push is coming from somewhere specific. It's coming from hundreds of billions of dollars in investments that need to generate returns. It's coming from companies that have overpromised what this technology can do. It's coming from a race to dominate a market before regulations catch up. And the cost of all that, the electricity, the water, the land, the displacement, the jobs lost, is being distributed among regular people, while the upside is concentrated among a very small number of already extremely wealthy individuals and institutions. So again, back to the graduates, the ones sitting in those chairs, they know this. They've spent 4+ years being told not to use AI for their assignments. They have watched people in their fields get laid off and replaced with AI. They have watched studios, labels, newsrooms, marketing departments, all of them gut their teams and say that AI will fill the gap. And now some out of touch person is standing at their graduation telling them that if they don't figure out how to make it work for them, that's on them. So of course they're booing. I'm booing too. Boo, boo. And I think that the question isn't whether AI has any value. I'm not arguing that. It does. I'm not saying that we should torch the whole thing yet. But then again, I would be fine if it went away, to be honest. But the question is, who decides how fast it moves? Who absorbs the cost? Who benefits from the upside? And whether any of these people have ever once driven past a transmission corridor being built through someone's childhood home. It's not inevitable if they stop forcing it on us. I recommend if there's a town hall meeting in your area discussing an AI data center, you go to it. Here in the Springs, there's something called Project Taurus. I see the signs everywhere, and my algorithm is constantly showing me videos of the town hall meetings. We just moved here, so I didn't even know that this was going on, but I figured I should look into this so that the next town hall meeting I can go to. So, a California-based AI real estate company called Raiden wants to retrofit the old Intel chip manufacturing facility off Garden of the Gods Road and Centennial Boulevard into an AI data center. And the residents of Colorado Springs have certainly not been quiet about it, rightfully so. Back on April 7th, the first community meeting was held at a hotel near the site. The line wrapped around the building. The conference room holds about 100 people, and it was filled twice over. The fire marshal had to warn organizers the room was overcrowded, and they ended up splitting one meeting into two and still had to turn people away because there were just so many people. Then on May 14th, the second community meeting drew over 500 residents. Raiden's COO, Jason Green, said that while he anticipated pushback, he was disappointed by what he described as a lack of community respect and felt the intensity of the room overshadowed opportunities for open dialogue. The company has also since reported receiving threats related to the project, and personally, to me, it sounds like you just don't want to listen to the community members. Now, of course, Raiden says what everyone else says. They say that the data center will create between 80 and 100 high-paying jobs. They say because it's classified as a large load user, it will pay extra costs to Colorado Springs utilities and won't affect residents' bills. Former Colorado Springs Mayor John Suthers has come out in support of it, saying it will prime the city's economy for military and private sector investment. Do you think just regular people are in private sector investment, John? But here's what residents are actually asking based on what I found, and it's the obvious questions that everyone's asking. How many of those jobs are permanent versus contracted construction jobs? Also, the facility will sit about 500 feet from residential homes. It will run 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and if you haven't, go on YouTube. You can hear how loud those things are. So Goodbye birds, goodbye sounds of nature, goodbye peace and quiet. A community group called Integrity Matters pointed out that the city didn't properly regulate the last data company at that location and may be similarly unprepared for this one. They're asking for the approval to be paused until an independent third-party analysis is completed and publicly reviewed. They're saying this sets a precedent. Once it's built, the impacts are permanent. And right up the road, the town of Monument is watching all of this very closely. Monument's mayor directed the planning department to start researching data center impacts on the town after watching national news coverage, and the town is now considering an outright ban before any proposal even shows up. Now, I know that was a lot, but also maybe it wasn't nearly enough. As always, if there's anything deeper you want me to get into or a different topic entirely, or if I left out key information, let me know, send me a message, leave a comment. But before I go, a little recap of what I'm watching and reading. So, I finished Anatomy of an Alibi. I really enjoyed it, although with all this AI talk, it's got me wondering if a real person edited the book or not, because they used the word further every time and it should have been farther. Further and farther mean two different things. But in general, I felt like the story itself was great. It doesn't have a slow start to it at all. It gets right to business. And I love a twist, even if I can predict it. I love multiple person point of views. I love solving a mystery. I could easily see this adapted for a miniseries or a limited series. I really liked it. If you want boots on the ground, real quick story, Anatomy of an Alibi. I'm also still hanging on with Euphoria. There's one more episode to go. And honestly, I feel like this season was just for the writer to have Sydney Sweeney naked as much as possible and dumb her down even more. And then just kind of write off everyone else and focus on new characters, even though this is supposedly the final season. So I kind of feel like it's less of a completion of Euphoria and more of a soft launch for a new anthology series or a new spin-off. This season is very much not in line with the other two seasons. This season is more like a body horror thriller comedy. The vibes just aren't the same, and it feels like an entirely new show, which I feel is a weird move to make when you're doing the final season when everything should be kind of coming to an end and closing chapters. It's weird. And then Off Campus, guys, I really liked it. It's cute, it's funny, it's corny at times. Sometimes it's a little frustrating, it's a little smutty. The product placement was cringy, but they obviously had to pay for their stacked soundtrack somehow, and I'll forgive them for that because the songs are great. And honestly, it makes me want to read the books before the second season comes out. So stay tuned for that. And in a classic Midwestern goodbye, I have one more thing before I go. I have some recommendations for you. I love a movie based on true events, and maybe it's toxic of me, but I love movies that leave me feeling kind of pissed. I don't know, maybe it motivates me to research and see what, if anything, I can do. In general, it just lights a fire under my ass. So I have some movies for you to watch if you're into that sort of thing. I know there will be movies about what's happening now with AI if there aren't already. I mean, there are movies about AI, some as far back as the 1920s. That's right, the 1927 sci-fi Metropolis. Look it up. But I have some movies for you to watch that will piss you off about all the right things. So these aren't documentaries. They're dramatized. They're Hollywood, whatever. But maybe it'll get you to research or watch some documentaries about this stuff. First up, 2019's Dark Waters, starring Mark Ruffalo, Anne Hathaway, and a bunch of other big names. It's a legal thriller based on a true story. Mark plays a corporate defense attorney who helps expose a decades-long cover-up by the chemical giant DuPont. Boo. P.S. We're still being poisoned by them. Second, 2012's Promised Land. It stars Matt Damon, John Krasinski, Frances McDormand, and a bunch more stars. And honestly, I think that this one is even more important for what we're likely already dealing with in regards to data centers. Just this is about fracking. So, Matt and Francis's characters are corporate sales reps. They go to a small rural farming town in Pennsylvania. The locals are struggling financially. And what do you know? This natural gas company wants to drill in their town and promises a better economy. Yay, we're saved. But then a local science teacher, played by Hal Holbrook, questions the company's claim at a town hall meeting, and he's backed by an environmental activist, played by John Krasinski. So this whole easy peasy deal is now met with a fight. But some people aren't who they say they are, and the movie shows just how manipulative giant corporations are and who pays the price. And of course, you have to watch 2000's Erin Brockovich starring Julia Roberts. So Julia plays a legal clerk, Erin Brockovich, who single-handedly uncovers a massive cover-up involving Pacific Gas and Electric, contaminating a small town's groundwater. And speaking of Erin Brockovich, she just launched a major campaign targeting the explosive growth of energy-intensive and water-consuming AI data centers across the U.S. She has a crowdsourced tracking map called the Brockovich Data Center Reporting Map. It allows citizens to directly report local data center developments, transparency issues, and environmental side effects. And honestly, I think I might just do an episode on her eventually, so stay tuned for that. And I have just a few more movies to piss you off in the right way. 2014's 99 Homes, starring Michael Shannon and Andrew Garfield. Andrew plays a single dad who gets evicted, and he ends up finding a job working for a real estate broker played by Michael Shannon, who is also the same person who evicted him. And the movie just shows how exploitative the real estate business is towards economically depressed families, and it will piss you off. 2016's Deepwater Horizon, starring Mark Wahlberg, Kurt Russell, John Malkovich, plus a bunch more. It's another stacked cast. It's about the reckless, cheap-ass choices BP made that resulted in the 2010 oil blowout in the Gulf of Mexico. Plus, it also dives into the systemic failure of it all. And this one, every time I see it, still pisses me off so much. But it's such a great movie. Lastly, 2015's The Big Short. Once again, another stacked cast. This includes Christian Bale, Ryan Gosling, Steve Carell, a bunch more. This one is about the 2008 financial crisis, and it follows a group of investors who bet against the U.S. mortgage market. They end up finding corruption through their research, and it becomes this whole thing. It's a very fast-moving movie, so even if you've seen it before, I recommend just watching it again. It's another film highlighting that regular people like you and me rarely come out on top. Our downfall is a billionaire's cash out. And the reason I suggest these movies is because you can apply these stories to what's happening now with AI. Billionaires and tech companies are never, ever on our side. Really, no corporation is on our side. I fear people forget how far removed from reality these companies, billionaire giants, are, especially our reality. It's much different than theirs. So they don't relate, how could they? And if they can't relate, they don't care. Why would they? That's why I feel like we should be nagging and being annoying and being loud about how we feel about AI. We have to do our own research and not just asking Claude, okay? Go to your local town hall meetings, stay informed, read some books or watch a movie or a documentary. Ask friends or family what they think. Maybe they live near an AI data center. Go check it out. See what's changed and in such a short amount of time. That's all I have for you today, folks. If you're in a community dealing with a data center fight, or you watched those commencement videos and maybe you felt a fire burning, or you watched one of those films I recommended, or if you have more to recommend, I want to hear about it. Pop on into my DMs at indistinct.pod or at Eliza Hollister. They're still empty, by the way. And if you have a topic you want me to dig into, I'll be here waiting. Becky, your ticks episode is coming soon. As always, if you liked this episode, please rate, review, share, and subscribe wherever you're listening. I will love you forever. Follow along on Instagram, send me suggestions, feedback, topics, recommendations, all that stuff. We will chat next week. Love ya. Love you. Bye.